While she slept, he watched her, recorded her, controlled her. He called it love, but every clip, every message told a different story. And when Tiffany finally told a friend that she might not make it out, she wasn't being dramatic. She was predicting her own ending. Her phone went silent that week. Her car appeared 30 miles away. Her purse and ID were still inside, but Tiffany was gone. Her full name? Tiffany Nicole Sparks Foster. Hey there. Today's story. This one's heavy, because what starts as love isn't supposed to turn into fear, and fear isn't supposed to feel like home. It's a story about control, the kind that hides under the word love. Love isn't supposed to need witnesses, but when someone turns affection into evidence, you realize it was never love at all. It was ownership. And when ownership starts to slip away, the person who can't stand to lose control tries to erase what they can't keep. All right, here's how it all went down. That sound you just heard? That was the last time anyone saw Tiffany alive. But to understand how everything unraveled, we have to go back to the moment her world started closing in. Newnan, Georgia. A quiet stretch of Coweta County where back roads thread through pine trees, and most nights end in the glow of porch lights and headlights fading down Highway 29. It's the kind of southern town that prides itself on routine. Neighbors waving, kids playing ball in driveways, families winding down before another early morning shift. But on this night, something felt off. The air was still, heavy, like the calm before a storm. Monday morning, March 1st, 2021. Tiffany texted her mom before heading out. She said she was going out to the grocery store. Nothing unusual. By afternoon, her mother, Katrina, tried calling her, just to check in. The call rang once, then went to voicemail. She tried again that evening. Same thing. No answer. At first, she didn't panic. Maybe Tiffany stopped to see a friend. Maybe her phone died. But as the hours went on, that quiet worry began to grow. She called again. Still nothing. No text back. No, I'm fine. By the next morning, March 2nd, the worry had spread through Tiffany's house. Her bed that should have shown signs of her return didn't. And the groceries she said she'd pick up never made it home. Tiffany's teenage daughter was worried, so she called her grandmother, Katrina, to tell her that her mom hadn't come home. Katrina tried calling one more time, but every call went straight to voicemail. That's when the family started reaching out. Katrina called Tiffany's younger sister, Kimberly, and Kim called their other sisters to see if anyone had heard from her. No one had. They checked Tiffany's social media. No new posts, no messages, nothing. For Tiffany, that was strange. When Katrina realized it had been 24 hours since anyone had seen or heard from Tiffany, the hope she'd been clinging to slipped away. She picked up the phone, not to call her daughter this time, but to call the Coweta County Sheriff's Office. That was the moment everything changed. So who was Tiffany? Before the searches, before the headlines, Tiffany Foster was simply Tiffany. A 35-year-old mother of 3, 2 boys and a girl, juggling work, school, and life. Doing what so many women do every day, holding it all together, even when it wasn't easy. She was studying criminal justice at Georgia Military College, hoping to one day work in law enforcement, to protect people, to make a difference. Her family called her Tiff. To her sisters, she was the funny one, quick with a comeback, always finding the light in things. To her kids, she was steady, the one who showed up at games, the one who made ordinary moments feel special. She lived in Creekside at White Oak Apartments on Lakeside Way, a quiet complex tucked between back roads and busy parking lots. That's where she built a life with her fiancé of 2 years, Reginald Robertson, the man she'd met through her job in security. For a time, it felt like everything was settling into place. A home, a partner, a plan. But when Tiffany disappeared, the first voice to speak up wasn't him. He fell asleep. And when the sun traded places with the moon the next morning, it was her 15-year-old daughter who sounded the alarm, calling her grandmother to say, "Mom didn't come home." And when detectives started retracing her steps, they'd find that the picture of Tiffany's life wasn't what it seemed. When the call came in, deputies from the Coweta County Sheriff's Office began their checks. Phone records, known addresses, local hospitals, and jails. The usual places you look when someone disappears without warning. But there were no arrests, no hospital admissions. As part of standard procedure, detectives began with the people closest to Tiffany: family, co-workers, and the man she lived with. Her mom and sisters said they talked almost every day. Kim remembered that the last she heard, Tiffany had gone to Kobe's for dinner that Sunday night. She even posted about it, but after that, there was nothing. Katrina said Tiffany texted early Monday morning, saying she was heading out to run errands, said she tried calling Tiffany all day, and again the next morning after her granddaughter called. But still, no answer. Then they met with Reggie, her live-in fiancé, the one who shared that apartment at Creekside. He told them Tiffany had left home to run errands and never came back. He said he thought she was fine, that maybe she just needed a little time to herself, suggesting she might have gone to clear her head or take a break. He said he started to worry as the night dragged on, checking the time at 10, 11, then 1, then 2, before falling asleep waiting for her. When morning came, she still wasn't there. But detectives had questions. If he was worried enough to keep checking the clock, 11, 1, 2 a.m., why not call her family or any of her friends? And when morning came and she still wasn't there, why wasn't his first call to the police? Detectives noted his answers. They weren't enough to put anything together yet, but they didn't quite settle either. Something in the tone, in the timing, didn't line up with what the rest of the family was saying. So while the public was still hearing missing person, investigators were already making mental notes, because the first person you talk to sometimes ends up being the last one who saw her alive. The next day came and went, and Tiffany didn't show up for class at Georgia Military College. She missed her shift at Garda Security, where she was assigned to the HelloFresh facility in Newnan. And ultimately, she missed a flight she booked to Texas to visit a friend. For Tiffany, reliable, organized, and focused, that was completely out of character. Detectives took note of it. But for her family, it only deepened the fear they were already carrying. Detectives soon learned that Tiffany's blue 2020 Nissan Altima was missing as well, a 4-door sedan she drove everywhere. They entered it into the system, hoping it might turn up somewhere across Georgia. A few days later, it did. Her car was found in College Park, roughly 30 miles from home, parked in the lot of a shopping center off Godby Road. Inside was everything that tied her to her life: her purse, debit card, keys, ID, and her Garda security jacket, her work badge still tucked inside the pocket. The photo defaced, the eyes scratched through with a pen. Hazel eyes, soft, unmistakable. One of her most striking features, now violently erased from her own picture. It was the kind of discovery that chilled everyone involved, because even without words, It suggested that her sudden vanishing may not have been by choice, but by design. Detectives canvassed the area, pulling surveillance footage from nearby stores and gas stations, including local grocery stores along her usual route. They watched every frame they could find. Tiffany never appeared on any of them. A security guard working that College Park lot told police that a man had come by asking about the camera footage. He told him they hadn't been recording that week, meaning no one saw who left the car behind. Officers documented the encounter and obtained a description of the man before leaving the scene. The car was processed and towed. No signs of a struggle. Crime scene technicians processed the car for prints and trace evidence. Latent fingerprints were found, the kind they expected to see, belonging to those who'd had access to the car. To the public, it was still a missing person case. To police, it was starting to look like something much darker. A woman doesn't leave her kids, her job, and the schoolwork she was just months away from completing. And she doesn't leave her entire life sitting in the front seat of a car. About 2 weeks later, Reggie joined Tiffany's family at a press conference where they pleaded for the public's help and asked for Tiffany's safe return. He wasn't scheduled to speak. But when someone in the crowd asked if he wanted to say a few words, he stepped up to the microphone. His delivery was soft, deliberate. Each word weighed before it left his mouth. His tone never rose, never wavered. Between sentences, that dry, nervous click of his tongue broke through the silence, the kind that comes when your mouth goes dry, and your conscience might too. He didn't sound desperate. He sounded careful, like a man trying not to say too much.
I'm her fiance. And if anybody do know anything, could you please, contact this office and let them know. Like I said, no matter how small or big, because it's just unusual. She would never not go without talking to those kids, Even me, she would not go without talking to me,
When was the last time, sir, that you heard from her, and what was that about?
When she left from home. She left me and her daughter at home. We haven't seen her, Further we know, she was just going to go run errands and do some things, and she's gone, just like that.
Then, when did you suspect something was wrong? How long did that take?
When it got late at night, 10, 11, and I figured, because he should have been home by then. And I was calling, but the phone kept on the voicemail. So I figured wherever she at, I don't know, maybe phone dead. And then after I sit around for a while and dozed off to sleep, when it get about 1 in the morning, I know something definitely wrong, because she's not going to be out after no 1 o'clock.
For anyone listening that day, his voice was even, almost flat, careful, measured, emotion held tight behind each word. Those in the room described his eyes as distant, empty, his face unreadable, like a man trying not to say the wrong thing, rather than one pleading for the woman he loved. To the public, it was a plea. To detectives watching from the back, it looked more suspicious, a hint there might be more to his story. In the weeks that followed, flyers went up across Coweta County. On storefronts, gas pumps, church bulletin boards. Tiffany's photo was everywhere. The same bright smile, the same hazel eyes that everyone remembered. At first, the Coweta County Sheriff's Office offered a $1,000 reward for information leading to Tiffany's whereabouts. It wasn't much, but it was something, a spark to keep the public looking, to keep her name alive in the community. Then the offers grew. Crime Stoppers and local donors stepped in, raising the total to $8,000 by April 2021. Billboards went up, calls came in, but none of the leads went anywhere. Later, the plea grew louder, and the numbers told the story. 2 new rewards were announced: $35,000 for information leading to the prosecution of the person responsible for her disappearance and $60,000 for information that could lead to her safe return. Despite the growing rewards, no one came forward. The search maps stopped expanding, and the tips, the hope, started slowing down. A few weeks after the press conference, as detectives combed through footage from nearby stores and intersections, they widened their search, looking for anything that might show where Tiffany, or her car, had gone next. Then, as more footage became available, a neighbor's camera caught something unexpected. Tiffany's blue Nissan Altima in motion, recorded after she'd already been reported missing. Detectives also discovered that wasn't the only sighting. Traffic and security cameras around town had also captured the same car on the move in the days following her disappearance. But what stunned detectives wasn't the car itself. It was the person behind the wheel. It wasn't Tiffany. It was Reginald Robertson, her live-in fiancé, the man who had told police she'd driven off and never returned. That footage made one thing clear. Reggie hadn't been honest. Tiffany didn't leave in her car and fail to come home. He was the one driving it after she vanished. For detectives, that was the break they needed. Because if Reggie was behind the wheel after she disappeared, the question wasn't where Tiffany went. It was what he'd done to make sure she never came back. Within days of reviewing that footage, detectives acted. They obtained warrants and brought Reggie in for questioning again. This time, not just as the worried boyfriend, but as the man last seen driving Tiffany's car. On April 8, 2021, Reggie was arrested. He was charged with theft by taking for operating Tiffany's vehicle and making false statements to investigators. Publicly, authorities were cautious. They stopped short of calling him a suspect in Tiffany's disappearance. But privately, detectives knew the case had turned. A man doesn't drive the car of a missing woman, lie about it, and walk away from scrutiny. Reggie was booked into the Coweta County Jail. 3 days later, he posted bond and walked out, free, but firmly on the department's radar. But behind the scenes, detectives weren't done. They were retracing everything, every report, every file, every name that had ever crossed their desks. And that's when they got their next break. They still hadn't found Tiffany. But they found something else. Something that changed how they viewed the man she was living with. Detectives uncovered evidence that Reggie had kidnapped Tiffany months before she went missing. The proof wasn't buried in some distant archive. It was right there, in their own system. A 911 call, a report, and his name. All sitting there since November 2020. And no one connected it until she was already gone.
911, what's your emergency?
The 911 call came in just after 10:30 that night. It lasted 9 seconds. Dispatchers heard a woman crying, her voice shaking, saying she was scared, that he had a gun, and she said his name, Reggie. Then the line went dead. The call was traced to an abandoned home on Lower Fayetteville Road in Newnan. When dispatchers called the number back, a man answered, calm, steady, and claimed the call had been a mistake. He said he and Tiffany were home. Then he hung up. But they weren't home. They were still out there, near the location of the call. And minutes later, a patrol officer would see their car weaving down that same road. Inside were Reggie and Tiffany. She was crying, visibly terrified. But when the officer asked if she was okay, she whispered that she couldn't say anything, that if she did, he'd kill her. The officers heard it. They checked their IDs, saw no outstanding warrants, and let them drive away. When detectives later searched that abandoned house, they found zip ties, bloodstains, a spent shell casing, and a bullet hole in the ceiling. Signs that someone had been restrained, and that a gun had been fired. That night was months before Tiffany disappeared. But it was the first time her fear of Reggie was captured on record. On April 20th, 2021, authorities arrested Reggie again, this time on charges of kidnapping, aggravated assault, and false imprisonment, charges unrelated to Tiffany's disappearance. He pleaded not guilty to all charges. This time, he was denied bond. In the weeks that followed, Tiffany's mother, Katrina, couldn't shake what she'd heard. When she confronted Reggie about that 911 call about the house on Lower Fayetteville Road, he didn't deny it. He told her he had tied Tiffany up there, said it happened during an argument, that he just wanted to scare her. Katrina later told detectives exactly what he said, and that admission, casual, unshaken, was what finally convinced detectives that the 911 call wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a warning. But even then, Katrina refused to give up. She kept reaching out to him, writing, visiting, hoping that, if she showed him grace, he might finally show her the truth. She appealed to whatever part of him still had a conscience, telling him to do it for Tiffany's 3 children, for their peace of mind, for the chance to finally bring their mother home. But despite her efforts, he stopped cooperating. The visits went quiet, and the answers never came. For Tiffany's family, it wasn't closure, but it was confirmation of what they'd known all along, that she hadn't simply disappeared. She'd been taken. As detectives kept digging, reviewing phone records, cloud backups, and devices seized early in the investigation, every file, every message, every photo was re-examined. That's when they found them. Multiple videos, recorded by Reggie himself. In each one, Tiffany appeared to be asleep, completely still, unaware, while Reggie assaulted her and recorded it. The footage was time-stamped months before she disappeared. It proved a pattern: violence, control, and humiliation. Reggie thought he was so clever, but he just made the rookie mistake of every dumb criminal, recording his own crimes. For investigators, this was no longer just a missing person case. It was a cycle of abuse escalating towards something worse. And when detectives cross-referenced those videos with the evidence from the November 2020 kidnapping, the 911 call, the GPS, the zip ties, the blood, the picture was complete. Months passed. It took nearly 3 years to piece it all together. But when they did, it revealed the monster Reggie truly was. The details were stunning. He thought no one would ever know, that he'd covered his tracks. But the horrifying truth was closing in, and the mask was about to fall. By mid-2023, the evidence told a story Tiffany never got to finish. Detectives had built what prosecutors called a case without a body. But they didn't need one. They had motive, method, and confession, all buried in the data he thought no one would find. On August 3, 2023, a Coweta County grand jury handed down a sweeping indictment. Reggie was charged with malice murder, felony murder, kidnapping, aggravated assault, false imprisonment, financial fraud, and concealing the death of another. He pleaded not guilty to every count. For Tiffany's family, it was a strange kind of relief, a moment where heartbreak met vindication. They still didn't have her body, but they finally had a name on paper for what they'd been feeling all along. Reggie didn't just make her disappear. He took her life. The trial would take years to come. But by the time it did in 2025, there was no mystery left about who Reggie was, only the question of how far he'd go to keep control. When the trial began, prosecutors had one goal: to let the evidence speak for Tiffany. They started with the data. Investigators testified that Tiffany's phone, later recovered inside her apartment, the same phone that went silent after she vanished, had been used on the very day she disappeared to run searches about a woodchipper. The search was performed just minutes before her phone stopped transmitting. And weeks later, a burned woodchipper was found on land belonging to Reggie's grandmother in Troup County. Near the burned woodchipper, investigators also found fragments of a bag of lime, scattered in the soil, partially burned. Lime is often used to mask the smell of decomposition, sometimes even to break down human remains. It's not something you keep around for cleaning. It's something you use when you're trying to make sure no one ever finds what's left. Cadaver dogs detected the odor of human remains both inside the machine and in the soil around it. Forensic teams recovered bone fragments and pieces of fabric that appeared to have been burned with it. Those fragments were sent to the lab and compared to Tiffany's family's DNA, but every test came back inconclusive. Lime and burning had destroyed what little genetic material remained. Prosecutors said that Reggie didn't just move Tiffany's car. He borrowed a friend's black Ford F-150 pickup, and when investigators processed the vehicle, they found bloodstains in the bed of the truck. Prosecutors told jurors they believe the blood belonged to Tiffany, though again, DNA testing couldn't confirm it conclusively. They believe he used that truck to carry her body to those woods in Troup County behind his grandmother's home, the same place where the wood chipper, the lime, and the burned fragments were found. Then came the digital messages, the texts Tiffany and Reggie sent before she vanished. Prosecutors read them aloud in court. In them, Reggie tried to explain what he'd done. "I don't want to hurt you. I want to love you. I don't like getting it like that. It's like every night, I got to get it while you're sleeping. I shouldn't have to ask you." They played voice memos of Reggie, admitting he assaulted her and implying it wasn't the first time. To prosecutors, it sounded like an apology, but it wasn't. He wasn't apologizing. He was justifying and minimizing something he couldn't bring himself to name. Tiffany's replies showed exhaustion and fear. She was upset enough to call it what it was. She told him she was tired, that she needed space, that she couldn't keep living like this. And just days before she disappeared, Tiffany sent a message to a close friend that read, "If anything happens to me, Reggie did it. I'm leaving him." It was her final act of self-documentation. Tiffany telling the world what might happen if she didn't survive. During the trial, one of Reggie's cousins testified that while they were both in jail, Reggie allegedly admitted what he'd done, that he tased Tiffany until she was unconscious, taped her up, drove her to an undisclosed location, and shot her in the head with her own gun. In court, jurors were shown video from the College Park parking lot, where Tiffany's Altima was found abandoned. A car believed to be carrying Reggie and his neighbor Jeremy can be seen pulling in, leaving her vehicle, then returning several minutes later. When the car was later processed by investigators, they found a single fingerprint all over the car, Tiffany's right index finger. They described them as the most pristine prints they'd ever seen. Prosecutors reminded the court that, after Tiffany disappeared, Reggie and Jeremy purchased a set of bolt cutters. Bolt cutters can cut through bone, the prosecutor told jurors. Bolt cutters can cut off an index finger. According to prosecutors, Reggie and Jeremy later returned to the vehicle to plant Tiffany's fingerprint and wipe away the rest. Those texts, alongside the videos, the 911 call, and the physical evidence, formed the spine of the state's case. Then prosecutors turned to Jeremy Walker, the man they said helped Reggie cover it all up. Surveillance footage showed the two of them together, buying latex gloves, a shovel, and bolt cutters after Tiffany disappeared, and later, Jeremy withdrawing $1,000 from her bank account at Reggie's direction. He even helped abandon her car in that College Park parking lot. Not only did they use Tiffany's phone to search for where to rent a wood chipper, but records from Jeremy's phone showed matching searches and calls, confirming he was an active participant in the effort to hide something. Cell phone data sealed the connection. Records placed both Reggie's and Jeremy's phones in Troup County, near the property belonging to Reggie's grandmother, the same site where the burned wood chipper, lime, and bone fragments were found. To prosecutors, it wasn't coincidence. It was coordination. and it proved that Reggie wasn't alone. He had help. Jeremy was charged with theft by taking, for the car, and with concealing the death of another. Jurors also saw a handwritten note Reggie allegedly gave his uncle, offering $1,000 for an alibi about the night of the 2020 kidnapping. And while in jail, he staged a fake rescue call, telling someone to get some canned goods and put them down a pipe, as if Tiffany were alive and hidden somewhere. A coded message investigators believe was meant to create a false lead about where to search. The prosecution called it a case where they erased her so completely she has never been found, but where technology told the story, she couldn't. And one by one, the details closed in. The lies, the footage, the searches, the control, the violence. But even with the evidence stacked high, Jeremy's defense claimed he didn't know Tiffany was dead, that he thought he was just helping Reggie hide something, not someone. And when it came to Reggie's turn, his attorneys called no witnesses, offered no evidence, and relied on a single argument, that without a body, there could be no proof of murder. Neither man took the stand. After emotional closing arguments, the jury received the case just after 1:30 that afternoon. They deliberated late into the evening, hour after hour, until around 8 p.m. The courtroom fell silent as the verdict was read. For the jury, the evidence was enough. Every message, every search, every lie, it all pointed back to the same truth. Tiffany didn't just vanish, she was erased. Reginald Robertson, guilty on all charges. He was sentenced to 3 life terms without the possibility of parole, plus 80 additional years. Jeremy Walker Sr., the co-defendant, was found guilty on 1 count of theft by taking and not guilty on 1 count of concealing the death of another. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. For Tiffany's family, it wasn't victory, it was validation. After years of waiting, the truth they'd known in their hearts had finally been spoken aloud. Some stories are tragic because of what was done. This one is tragic because of what wasn't. That night in 2020, Tiffany, in tears, told an officer in her own words that she was afraid to say what he'd done, because if she told them, he'd kill her. She was terrorized. And instead of pulling her from that car, instead of separating them, they let her drive away with the man who had already assaulted and kidnapped her. That moment could have changed everything, but no one acted. Tiffany never made it to any grocery store. That message is now believed to have been a ruse, another of Reggie's ploys to throw the family off his scent. After all, he had control of her phone at the time. And then after he did the unthinkable, Reggie went back to the same apartment they'd shared with her children, living there like nothing had happened. Detectives found 2 money orders, paid with Tiffany's own account, used to cover the rent after she was already gone. He slept in that bed, used her money, and told her family he didn't know where she was. That's what makes this story so hard to sit with. The systems that failed her, the monster who erased her, and the world that moved on while her family kept searching for justice. And the hardest part to swallow, Tiffany was studying criminal justice, training to keep others safe. Yet in the end, the very system she was working so hard to join didn't manage to keep her safe at all. Even her DNA was gone. Nothing left to test. As if he had worked to erase every trace of her. Well, he might have thought he could erase her. But in trying to silence her, he only amplified her voice, her presence, her legacy, through the very act meant to destroy her. And by that same act, he exposed the truth about himself. That's the story of Tiffany Nicole Sparks Foster. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being here with me. If you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. And if you ever want to hear these stories when you're winding down for the night, you can find the Sleuthy Stories Podcast on Apple Podcasts No bright screen, just the story, you and me. Until next time, stay safe. I'll see you in the next one.